Okay, so today is our last review on equivalent fractions, simplest form, mixed numbers, and improper fractions. And really, the reason that I wanted to review this today is because as we move forward, we really want to make sure that we're comfortable with going back and forth in between any of these forms, as well as decimals and percents, which we've covered earlier this week. So we're just going to spend a really quick time kind of going over these. So let's start with just a simple fraction, 3/4. Now, since 3/4 can't be made any smaller, there's no number, there's no factor that can divide into either of those, or either number that will go, or that can make that any smaller. It is in its simplest form. But I can multiply this by any number. So here I'm going to multiply it by 2, and that should give me, the answer would be 6/8. So just like what I did, as long as I multiply top and bottom by the same amount, I'm going to have the same, or I'm going to have an equivalent fraction. I could also take a number, and so I could take a number like 3/4, and I can multiply top and bottom by just some random number. It doesn't have to be 2. I generally do it by 2s and 3s because those are just easier for me to process in my head. But what if I multiplied top and bottom by 6? Now, if I multiply the numerator by 6, it's going to be 3 times 6 is 18. And if I multiply the denominator by, or which is 4, 4 times 6 is 24. And all of these are equivalent fractions. So 3/4 is this fraction in simplest form. It is same, it's equal to 6/8, and both of those are equal to 18/24. And what does that mean? That means that they're all equal out of one whole. If the whole is cut into 4 pieces, 3 of them would be shaded or taken or used. If the whole was cut into 8 pieces, that means 6 are being used. And if the whole was cut into 24 pieces, then 18 were being used. So just to give you guys kind of a visual really quick, if I had something that was 3/4, and all of these are one whole, they're all the same amount. And if they're all one whole, then 3/4 of them that are shaded are going to be 1, 2, 3 out of 4. On the next one, since we have 6/8, we see that if the same whole, the size of the piece hasn't changed, but if it was cut into 8 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those pieces. And if you can tell, kind of right here, and I'll try and choose a different color, these take up the same amount. So they're equal. They're taking up the same amount of space, even though they're cut into different number of pieces. And on this last one, let's say it was 18/24. So if 18/24, and the same thing, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. And my drawings aren't perfect, but you can see that even 18/24, it's the same amount. So it's not necessarily that because I'm using bigger numbers, one is bigger. It's the bottom number is telling me how much of it is being, the whole is cut into, and the top number is telling me how many are shaded in. So that's our look at equivalent fractions. You just need to make sure that it's not, that they're all the same value, it's just different numbers. We could also look at simplest form. And simplest form is a form of an equivalent fraction, but let's say I had 16/32. Now I could just keep, since these are both even numbers, I can divide by the same factor, which is going to be 2, and 16 divided by 2 is going to be 8. 32 divided by 2 is 16. So that would be 8/16. But I could still make that smaller. So far, all I've got is that I have 2 equivalent fractions. So these are equivalent, but there's not one in simplest form. So I could say 8/16, and once again, I could just go by 2 since they're both even, but since I can tell right away that they're both divisible by 8, I'm going to save some time, and I'm going to divide by the factor 8, since 8 will go into both of those evenly. And 8 divided by 8 is going to be 1, and 16 divided by 8 is going to be 2. So now, yes, this is an equivalent fraction, but this fraction right here is in its simplest form. So I know a lot of the times you guys get it pretty easily as far as making sure that you are simplifying your answers, but you need to make sure that sometimes, what if I start it with 1/2? What if I start with the simplest form, and you need to come up with an equivalent fraction? So you need to, even though sometimes you simplify your answers to get a problem, you also need to make sure you can go the other way and go to your equivalent fraction. So that leads us to our next one, which is improper and mixed numbers. So an improper fraction, we know traditionally the top number, the numerator, should be smaller than the denominator. That is a traditional fraction. But what if I had 1 whole plus something? So let's say I had 1.5. This now is called a mixed number. And a mixed number is really just that. It's a whole number plus a fractional part of a number. So, but what if I were doing something where I needed to add these two? And so what if I had 1/2 plus 3 1/2? Now, yes, we could do it in our heads, but there's a lot of different ways that we could approach this problem. I could say 3 plus 1 is 4, and then 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1 whole, and I could get 5 that way. But that's not the only way that I could do it. What if I had something and I had to make these into improper? So now, instead of making it where the numerator is smaller, I'm going to make it bigger. So what you do is you multiply the whole number, which is 1, times the denominator, which is 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. And then just add the numerator. So 1 times 2 plus the numerator is 3. And then I put it over the original denominator, which is 2. And then same with this one. We've got 3, and 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is going to be 7. And then I put 7 over the original denominator. Now I can just add those as regular fractions. And remember, when we're adding fractions and they have the same denominator, the denominator just stays the same. And then 3 plus 7 is 10. And then just like what we've been practicing, when we want to turn an improper fraction back into a mixed number, you just divide the top by the bottom. So 10 divided by 2, and that's going to give us 5. So there are two different approaches to how you could solve the same problem. So just a quick recap, equivalent fractions are any fractions that are equal this, when it's as small as it can, when there's no factor that goes into both the numerator and the denominator, that is your simplest form. If the mixed number and you need to turn it into an improper fraction, you just multiply the whole number times the denominator, and then you add the numerator. So 3 times 8 is 24. 24 plus 4 is 28. And you put it back over that original denominator, so 28 over 8. And if you need to turn that back into a mixed number, all you do, it's just like turning a fraction into a decimal. You just divide the numerator by the denominator. So 28, it goes into 8 3 times, and then 3 times 8 is 24. Subtract, and I get 4, and then that leaves me with 4/8. And on both of these, I could, since it's 4/8, I could simplify it, just because, you know, I'm going to make you simplify all your answers on your fractions. So divide top and bottom by, I divided by 2, and I just realized that I could divide both of those by 4. Divide top and bottom by 4, since 4 is the largest factor that can go into both, and that's going to leave me with 3.5. So now I've simplified my mixed number. All right, guys, so your homework tonight is I'd like you to give me 3 equivalent fractions for the 6/9. I'd like you to simplify 12/36. I'd like you to take 42 over 6, and I want you to make this into a mixed number. And I'd like you to take 9 3/8, and I want you to turn this into an improper fraction. So we'll go ahead and check these tomorrow, and have a good day.